There are moments in a story that feel like they've been building forever. Moments where every conversation, every glance, every quiet exchange suddenly reveals its purpose. Where everything that came before stops feeling like filler and starts feeling like foundation. The sneak peek for When Calls the Heart Season 13, Episode 13 is one of those moments. And from the very first second, it makes one thing absolutely clear. This finale is not just another episode, it is the episode. The one that every season of this show has been quietly, carefully, deliberately moving toward. To understand why this sneak peek hits so hard, you have to go back. Not just to the beginning of Season 13, but further. Back to the very roots of Nathan Grant's story in Hope Valley. When Nathan first arrived, he carried something with him that went far beyond his badge, his duty, and his quiet, steady presence. He carried loss. He carried guilt. He carried the kind of emotional weight that doesn't disappear with time, but instead shapes every decision, every relationship, every moment of connection. And for a long time, that weight kept him at a distance from the one thing he wanted most. It kept him from Elizabeth, not because the feeling wasn't there. It was always there. It was impossible to miss. But because Nathan Grant, for all his strength, had spent years convincing himself that wanting something wasn't enough reason to reach for it. That pattern defined him through so much of this show. There were moments, so many moments, where everything lined up, where the feeling was right, where Elizabeth was right there, where all it would have taken was one honest word, one real step forward. And each time, something pulled him back. Sometimes it was circumstance, sometimes it was timing, but most of the time, if you were watching closely, it was Nathan himself. His own hesitation, his own deeply rooted belief that holding back was somehow safer than opening up. And fans watched that pattern with equal parts frustration and understanding. Because it wasn't weakness, it was pain, wearing the mask of caution. But Season 13 changed something. Slowly, quietly, in the way this show always works best, it began to strip away those layers. It gave Nathan room to breathe, room to reflect, and most importantly, room to grow into the version of himself that had always been possible, but never quite fully realized. The challenges he faced this season weren't just plot points. They were tests. They pushed him into corners where hesitation wasn't an option, where he had to make choices and live with them, where he had to confront not just the world around him, but the world inside him. And what emerged from that process was something different, something steadier. A version of Nathan Grant who no longer looks at his own feelings like there's something to be managed. He looks at them like there's something to be honored. And that shift, that quiet but profound transformation, is exactly what the sneak peek for Episode 13 captures. From the very first moment, you can see it in the way he holds himself. There's no more shrinking, no more stepping back from the edge just before it matters. There's a calm about him now, but it's not the calm of indifference. It's the calm of someone who has made up his mind. Someone who has had every internal argument, rehearsed every possible outcome, and arrived at a place where the only thing left to do is act. And that energy, that quiet but unmistakable determination, radiates through every second of what the sneak peek shows. What makes it even more powerful is the setting. Hope Valley itself feels different in this finale. There's a quality to the atmosphere that longtime viewers will recognize immediately. It's the same feeling the show creates at its most important moments. A sense of quiet ceremony, like the town itself understands that something significant is unfolding within its borders. The streets feel a little softer, the light feels a little warmer, and the people who fill those streets carry themselves with a kind of reflective awareness, like they're all, on some level, holding their breath for the same reason. Because in a town as connected as Hope Valley, nothing truly happens in isolation. When something major is about to shift for one of its own, everyone feels it. And they all feel it now. But here is where the sneak peek becomes something more than just a preview of an exciting finale. It becomes a mirror, a reflection of everything this show has always been about at its deepest level. Not just romance, not just small-town warmth and community and the comfort of familiar faces, but the harder, more honest truth underneath all of that. The truth that love, real love, is terrifying. That opening yourself completely to another person, after loss, after heartbreak, after years of building walls that kept you safe but also kept you alone, is one of the most courageous things a human being can do. And Nathan standing where he stands in this sneak peek, on the edge of that kind of courage, is not a small moment. It is enormous. It is everything. and the sneak peek makes sure you feel every ounce of that weight before it even begins to show you what comes next. There is something about watching a person stand at the edge of their own truth that is almost impossible to look away from. Not because of what they say, not because of what they do, but because of everything happening in the space between. The breath held too long, the eye contact that lasts a second past comfortable, the words that form and dissolve before they ever reach the surface. That is exactly where the sneak peek for episode 13 lives. Not in the dramatic declarations or the sweeping gestures, but in the quiet, devastating space between what Nathan feels and what he hasn't yet said out loud. And it is in that space where the entire emotional power of this finale begins to reveal itself. Because what the sneak peek does brilliantly, in a way that only this show truly understands how to do, is it slows everything down. At a point in the season where most shows would be accelerating, throwing twist after twist at the audience, piling on the drama to keep attention locked in, When Calls the Heart does the opposite. It gets quieter, it gets stiller, and in that stillness, it forces you to pay attention to the things that actually matter. A shift in posture, a pause before answering, a moment where two people are in the same space and the air between them feels charged with everything that has never been spoken. These are the details that lesser storytelling overlooks. But this show has always known that the smallest moments carry the heaviest weight. And in this sneak peek, every single small moment is doing enormous work. Watch the way Nathan moves through the world in these glimpses the sneak peek offers. There is no wasted motion, no nervous energy spilling out in directions he can't control. He is focused in a way that feels new, intentional in a way that signals he has crossed some internal threshold that he cannot uncross. For seasons, Nathan's emotional journey was defined by a kind of circling, getting close to something important, pulling back, processing, regrouping, and approaching again from a slightly different angle. It was honest, and it was human, and it made him one of the most relatable characters this show has ever given us. But that circling has stopped. You can feel it. The orbit has collapsed into a straight line, and that line points directly at Elizabeth. And Elizabeth. It would be impossible to talk about this sneak peek without talking about where Elizabeth Thatcher stands in it. Because her growth this season has been just as significant as Nathan's, even if it has expressed itself in quieter, more internal ways. Elizabeth began this season already in a place of strength. She had done the hard work of rebuilding herself after loss, after grief, after the long and painful process of learning to trust her own heart again. But this season pushed her even further. It asked her not just to be strong, but to be certain. Not just to survive the hard moments, but to define for herself what she actually wants from the life she is still very much in the middle of building. And what the sneak peek suggests is that she has arrived at that definition. She knows. Maybe she has known for a while. But knowing something in your heart and having the universe align to let it finally become real are two very different things. And in this finale, those two things are finally moving toward each other. What is so compelling about the way Elizabeth is framed in the sneak peek is the absence of urgency in her presence. She is not waiting on the edge of her seat. She is not scanning the room for signs of what Nathan might do. She exists in these moments with a kind of grounded calm that feels like its own kind of answer. Like a woman who has already made peace with whatever is coming. Like someone who has stopped asking what if and started simply being present for whatever is. And that energy, that quiet readiness, is both deeply reassuring and somehow even more heartbreaking. Because it means that whatever Nathan does next, Elizabeth is ready to receive it fully. She is not going to soften the impact or give him an easy out. She is standing in her truth completely. And that means Nathan's decision lands not in uncertain territory, but in the most honest, clear, emotionally open space it possibly could, which raises the stakes even higher than they already were. The sneak peek also begins to pull back the curtain on something that has been quietly developing all season long. The people around Nathan and Elizabeth, the friends, the community, the familiar faces that make Hope Valley feel like home, they are all feeling the shift too. Not because anyone has told them anything, but because that is how it works in a place like Hope Valley. Emotion travels through the community like weather. You can feel it before you can name it. And what everyone around Nathan and Elizabeth is feeling right now is the particular electricity of something long overdue finally arriving. The conversations happening in the background of this sneak peek are not accidents. The glances exchanged between people who care about these two are not filler. They are the show quietly reminding you that love doesn't exist in a vacuum. It breathes in community. It is witnessed. It is held by the people who have watched and waited and hoped alongside the two people at the center of it all. And that collective holding of breath, that shared anticipation, makes the moment feel even larger than it already is. There is also something worth noting about the way the sneak peek handles time itself in this section. It does not rush. It does not skip over the uncomfortable pauses or cut away from the moments that sit heavy in the air. It lets them breathe. It trusts its audience to sit in the discomfort of not knowing, to feel the tension without needing it resolved immediately. And that trust is one of the most powerful things a story can offer its audience. Because when a show trusts you to feel something without explaining it to you, it means the emotion is real enough to stand on its own. And here, it absolutely does. Every second of uncertainty, every moment of almost, every breath taken just before something important is said and then swallowed back down, it all lands with a weight that is almost physical. You feel it in your chest before you process it in your mind.